You're listening to Data Center Therapy. Please take a number, and an engineer will be right with you.
All right. Welcome back, everybody, to another long overdue episode of Data Center Therapy, a podcast from IVOXY Consulting that talks all things IT with a healthy dose of empathy. Are you feeling empathetic lately?
Me? Yeah, sure. Yeah, always.
Okay, good. You can take mine then, too. I'm your host, Matt Yette. I'm joined with my typical co-host, Mr. Matt Cozzolino. Matt, how are you?
Great. Spectacular, amazing, happy holidays, all that fun stuff.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And we're also joined by our colleague, Mr. Dade Wilson. Dade, good to see you as well, sir.
Good to see you, Matt. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well. Is it a Happy New Year for you? Have you had a good week and a half now since?
I have. It's been busy. It's been kids are back to school. I'm back to work. So, mind is pointing down the right road again. Here we go.
Mm-hmm. Were you awake for the ball dropping on the East Coast?
Yes, I was. We had quite a few people over. They kept me up till 4. I haven't done that since I was young.
Although, right. Seattle time zone. Oh, I stayed up till 9. Oh, pat me on the back.
That was the same thing, though. It was for me. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning by the time I got home. I'm like, holy cow! I haven't seen 3 a.m. since forever.
Look at you two adults, or youngins, I should say. Meanwhile, I was tucked in warm by 10.
Right. Well, 10 hour time, right?
No.
10 year. What are you celebrating New Year's on like GMT 0 or something?
Like maybe 8 year time.
I tried. I asked that. I brought that up with we went over to some friend's house. I brought that up. I'm like, we could go home at like 10 o'clock because it's midnight on the East Coast, right?
Yeah. Well, it's weird. Growing up and being born on the East Coast, the ball dropping, it was easy, right? Like the ball dropped when it turned midnight for me. Mm-hmm. And when I moved out to Seattle at 27 years old, at that point I realized that's the marker. It lost its meaning. Because yay, it's New Year's, 9 o'clock, and I'm watching. Even though I watched the ball drop on TV in New York, watching the ball drop on TV in Seattle, it still felt even more disconnected. It's like that's happening over there in another time zone. It might as well be Australia for all I matter. So yeah, ever since then, I certainly can count on one hand in the last 20 years that I've stayed awake past midnight on New Year's Eve. So I am that old guy yelling at the fireworks in the sky. It's 2 o'clock. Aren't you done already?
Yelling at the fireworks to get off your lawn.
Well, being from Seattle,
imagine fireworks in Tennessee. You can imagine fireworks in Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
Being from Seattle and then living on the East Coast, I would stay up to watch the ball. But then at 3 a.m. when I'm nicely cozy, tucked in bed, like you said, my friends and family would start calling me and wake me up at 3 in the morning.
Oh, because they're all over here.
That's the other end of it. Yeah, because they're all in Seattle.
They all love you so much to wish you a happy New Year and wake you up.
No, they knew it just drove me crazy.
Best kind of family.
Do not disturb. That's just 3 words for you.
Well, this was a number of years ago before that feature existed.
Yeah.
I could have just turned off the phone, but.
Oh, back when you could take the battery out of your phone?
Or unplug it from the wall. Yeah.
Yeah. Or
what
that.
happens if your infrastructure goes down? How are you going to get alerted?
It can be down.
It's a holiday.
Welcome to another episode of Data Center Therapy. It can be down.
Mm-hmm. Hey, you know what? We should talk about my SLAs for my environment because they're not great.
Well, are you giving yourself refunds?
No.
Right.
Yeah. See, exactly.
Yeah. That's what somebody asked me about, like Plex. I'm like, you know what? I'll send you a refund. Sorry about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Let me dig out your invoices.
You're welcome that this works when it works. So
what's 10% of 0? Yeah. I just, a little side note, I just turned on no transcoding on my server.
Oh, yeah?
I can transcode. What I did was I leveraged Tautuli, which is the stat engine, right, for Plex. But you can also have that use webhooks to do scripts and stuff like this. So if somebody plays or resumes a file, it will check to see if it's video. It allows audio transcoding because a lot of players are goofy about audio codecs, and that's not server heavy to transcode the audio. So it'll direct stream the video and then transcode the audio. I'll allow that.
Does that cause any issues with subtitles?
Well, subtitles will do the burn, but I think a proper subtitle should not be burned in, right?
Subtitles are
or not.
Though. Well, that's kind of the question: does it? I thought subtitles had to transcode or kicked off a transcode, even if it's just like layering it over?
Nope. Nope. Subtitle. I direct play all the time at home, and I'm subtitles exclusive for like 10 years now. I can't watch television or movie without it. And that really has bummed me out because movie theaters aren't a thing anymore, especially Christopher Nolan movies. Because yeah. So that's caused a little bit of consternation in that people are like, oh, I can't get my Roku. I'm like, set it to this. Oh, it's not working. All right. Well, I tried. You're welcome. Yeah. Anyway, a few housekeeping announcements before we get going. And the reason d'etre really is this Active Directory Entra ID workshop / class that we're setting up. We've got a workshop coming up in February and a class in March. The dates exactly are TBD, but you're talking a month and a half away on that workshop. We're going to talk about that in just a second. I want to get through the few announcements here. We have an abnormal security and rubric joint webinar. I'm putting it on January 23rd, so a couple weeks from now. So abnormal security is it's as much as I'm here to roll my eyes about most things AI, like abnormal security seems to be leveraging it for appropriate and useful means, not just like let's slap this on our product for architecture reasons, but they leverage AI to do appropriate email protection filtering, and that extends not only at the... Sorry, Matt?
I was going to say, what did it for me was when we were doing the demo. When we were doing the demo with Rubric, or with, Entra... Abnormal. Jesus. Still early. When we were doing the demo with Abnormal, the cynical IT nerds in all of us were going like, whatever, oh my god, this is so dumb. Another webinar, demo, blah, 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 right? And then they started showing how it actually works. And what it hooks into and what it does so vastly differently than, hey, look, let me just filter your email stuff, that I think all of us lit up a little bit and went, whoa, look at that.
I made a comment on that. Yeah. That very experience, in that we're in the enviable position we have a lot of technology partners wanting us to sell their stuff. And the good news for me, and I get to be very spoiled and say, you know what? Either we like it or we don't, but even if we like it, do we have the expertise? Do we have the chops? Can we add value? Yes or no? And a lot of times it ends up being, no, thank you. We're good there. So to that point, okay, we're going to do a technology demo on this, guys. All right. Like, right. Coz, thank you for admitting that. Exactly. I mean, we want to be optimistic in all of this, but we've been, we've seen a lot.
Yet another storage array providing ice.
But I have brought it up, and it's like, wow, I've never seen the team so excited about a technology. It was fantastic. So we're doing where Rubric's piece of that is M365 protection, and it's going beyond M365. Now, I don't want to violate any NDAs, but there are a lot more things that Rubric's SaaS platform can now back up direct cloud to cloud, which is super. We use Rubric for M365 and AD or Entra ID, and it's incredible. I mean, like green check boxes. You ever go in and check your backup? Oh shoot, that hasn't been running for 2 weeks, and I never got notified that there was a failure. Like all day, every day. Never has happened in years with Rubric. So really great about let's protect your email in a really forward-thinking, simplistic but effective way. So that webinar is January 23rd. If you haven't gotten an invite from your account manager at IVOXY, email us at podcast@ivoxy.com. Or if you don't have an IVOXY account manager, email us at podcast@ivoxy.com. We'll shoot you over that invite link.
If you just want to send an email, email us at podcast@ivoxy.com.
Matt at ivoxy.com. You just want to email us. And that's that Matt, not this Matt.
Yeah.
And we've got an ARIA workshop coming up in March and the class in April. So we'll be talking more about that over the next couple of months. So rewind back to the very beginning. Dade, the Entra ID AD workshop. I don't love calling it that. So give me a sizzle name right now. What's the workshop called?
A Microsoft Identity Platform, I guess, is what you call it.
There you go. There you go.
And that's really what it's focused on, is just not necessarily advanced level, and actually probably not advanced level. This is for, those organizations that are just in their early forays into Entra ID and want to learn more, perhaps. Or maybe they're not there yet and want to know what best to do with on-premises Active Directory and how to get it there. That's really what we're aiming for.
So this is you running this workshop solo?
For now, unless you're volunteering.
I didn't say anything of the sort, and this is recorded.
So it'll be me and anyone who wants to join.
I'd sign up to be your assistant, but I don't know Entra or Active Directory near as well. We were just talking about Microsoft.
Okay. Well, I know a workshop you could attend that might help you there.
Very cool. Well, I mean, so like it or not, people are forced into leveraging it at the very least. If they're most of our customers are 365 customers at this point.
Yeah, actually.
Yeah, you will enjoy this whether you want to or not. Well, and
go ahead. I was going to ask you a question. Go ahead.
Go ahead for the question.
Well, so being the Active Directory person that I'm not, right? Like it was years ago, end of high school when I first did my Microsoft everything, and I never really spent time with the end user devices. And I hear about this world of everything's cloud, and there seems to be some amount of cloud-based Active Directory environment. Like, are we taking is the move from Microsoft to take your on-prem Active Directory authentication, identity management, and move it to a fully cloud-hosted solution, or is it still expected that you're going to run an Active Directory servers on-prem, like physical Active Directory servers on-prem?
More often than not, it's designed or expected to have both, and that's the hybrid identity, right? And you want the same identity in both places. You want your, at home dot whatever your business email address to be your identity, and that's one of the things that we're focusing on, and that's called hybrid identity, where it's the same, and you can leverage it in the cloud for single sign-on and all of your on-premises stuff, just like you always have.
I gotta feel like the eventual plan and the direction is to deprecate Active Directory forest technology proper, and probably you'll get to a point where you have an Entra ID on-premise component that is your new domain controller. The only problem is, I mean, how many applications? If it was just Microsoft, that's one thing, but how many applications leverage the Active Directory schema to one extent or another? And that's going to make that tail be super long in terms of deprecation. That's what I would think, right? I mean, you basically have two separate identity platforms that, precariously or otherwise, have to remain in sync, and that is a point right where if you're having configuration trouble, one thing that's always in your mind is, am I synchronized? Which is a potential problem point, I would think.
Sure, knowing where the source of record is always important. Like one of those has to own the data.
So right, that's kind of the question. Is like in today's world, which one of those is on-prem or in the cloud is the source of truth?
And that is a good question. I'd like to help you find it.
He's not going to give you the answer?
I don't have any inside info, and I don't know everyone's environment, but
so it could be either or. It could be either.
It could be either.
Is my source of truth, or my on-prem is the source of truth, and it feeds both ways, kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would gather it's most likely AD at this point, right? Because most of our customers have an Active Directory environment, and regardless of their journey, AD is probably not ripped out from the root and stem.
More often than not, if you have both existing on-premises, AD is going to be your source of truth.
Does Entra still hold the whole, schema? Is that the right word for?
It's not the same concept, right?
No, it's an identity platform, right? Okay. So it doesn't have that. And back to Matt's earlier comment, are we moving toward the cloud and Entra ID only? Well, I don't have any inside information, but it seems that way. I mean, we haven't had any schema extensions, or we've had extensions, but no schema updates for almost 10 years. Right? They kind of stopped doing that, and it's much more of a static platform. That kind of feels end of life. But
side note, Dade, have you ever had a schema upgrade problem?
Yes. I have.
Okay, so because I was everybody talks about it like this boogeyman. Ooh, I have to do a Forester and domain functionality upgrade. And then I'm like, every time I've ever done one, have I been lulled into this sense of security because they've always been smooth for me? For the first time in my life, I can say something about it. This has always gone smoothly for me. But still, you've run into issues?
Only once, and I've probably done hundreds of them.
We're right.
And it's Exchange. It was always an Exchange extension.
Always Exchange.
Not a schema upgrade. Never had an issue with an upgrade, but an extension add for, going from Exchange 2012 R2 to 2012 R3 or something like that. And it just failed. Recovery was tedious, but it worked. Those processes that are well documented they're there for a reason.
What is the schema in air quotes? Like, it's one thing to say, hey, here's this identity, this user identity thing, and it's got an email and a name and all of this information, right? And this ID, this user is part of a group and that kind of stuff. But what is like the schema when we talk about that?
Sure. Unofficially, it's the data structure, just like a database. You're having these extensions and bits and pieces that are leveraged by other bits and pieces, and if you don't have piece A in available to other pieces that are now set to use it, it will fail because it cannot find the data that it's looking for to continue for, whether it be for authentication or identification.
Have you ever played with IVOXY edit?
Right. Yes. Like
that
twice or something, right? But
I've done my Exchange experience started with 2000. We switched. I worked for a vocational school, and we had, and I can't remember the name of it. It wasn't Squirrel Mail, right? That's a webmail thing. There was some sort of binary mailbox product. It wasn't GroupWise. It was smaller than that, but we transitioned from that to Exchange 2000. And so I've been working on Exchange since 2000. The fun thing about some of these upgrades is I went to do a 2007 to 2013 upgrade, which was a major jump because that was a different structure where 7 and 10 played nice together, but and 10 and 13 are the same thing, but 7 to 13 were a leap. And it turned out that customer had a couple of 2003 servers that were in the schema, but were in the dumpster from 6 years ago. And so getting pretty angry and ripping stuff up like broccoli was a little fun play in IVOXY edit at the time.
IVOXY edit is the definition of the admin that says, "Oh, I know enough to be dangerous." That's
Yeti right there. So
me dangerous?
Yeah. So you can have the same amount of information in Entra as you do on-prem in your Active Directory environment, but it's just collected and managed differently because of the way it is. I'm thinking like object store versus just a file share with unstructured data. Is it that kind of thing? I can still put the same set of data in there. It's just managed differently.
Yeah, you can put that data in there.
Turn in there.
Yeah. Right. No, and I'm just thinking of all the like the Exchange attributes. And if you look at your schema structure, there's MSD. There's so much of that in there, and those don't exist on your Entra profile by default. It's all and I honestly don't know. Those may be there somewhere, but you're not going to find them looking through Entra ID.
Okay.
There's certainly an API to it, but the back-end structure you're shielded from, right? You're at the mercy of Microsoft interfaces into that. For example, when I provision somebody at IVOXY as a new employee, you can go into Azure AD. I probably will never stop calling it that, but you can go into the portal of Azure, go into Entra ID, click on your name, Coz, and I can look at your attributes, and that is effectively the equivalent to Active Directory.
Mm-hmm.
If we had an on-premise Active Directory, it would have been synced up there. But in terms of like that field, that field exists. But if I wanted to rip out that field, I could not. Right? I can delete the attribute information, but the attribute itself remains. But one of the things that we do is, since we use single sign-on for some applications, some of those applications well predated M365. They're set up with Dade. You might be Dade at IVOXY and Dade.Wilson at IVOXY and Daddy-O at IVOXY and whatever. And your application email address might be one of those aliases or something completely different. Well, do we want to really get into renaming user principal names and blah, 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 blah? So what I do is I use the Exchange attributes, which are the custom attribute 1 through 9 or whatever they are. But you can only do that through the Exchange Admin Center or admin.exchange.microsoft.com. That is an extent. This, again, varies. It's basically a rebuild, a mock mirror of the Active Directory on-premise thing. It exists AD on-prem too, but you can only get to that. You can't get to that through Entra ID directly. You have to go to the admin panel for Exchange to set these custom attributes. So
sounds like a management disaster. Management
overhead
disaster.
It kind of can be, in my opinion. And while they rebuilt it from the ground up, you can see they're basically mimicking what already exists. Because quite honestly, from a user identity platform, Active Directory, it's popular. Yes, it's with Windows and all of that, but nobody's sitting here saying Active Directory is trash and like my logins break all the time. Like it works. It's worked for 25 years.
I feel like it's
it
one
is
of
what
those
it is
things
because
that's
it is.
not forced upon us, but kind of forced upon us. Like everyone just has an Active Directory environment because that's just how you do it, and it's one of those things that we see has like grown, right?
It worked well with Windows PCs, and that's who's logging into the realm.
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
And that's really all it's needed to do. Yeah. Group policy, all that laying on top of it. It's extremely effective.
You were mentioning that AD's been around forever, and it's so many things integrated with it, and having this like long runway to maybe pull out that Active Directory environment. Is there any reason we couldn't move everything to Entra and then just have like I'm going to call it like an API endpoint where we're doing LDAP calls against this just box that like proxies these LDAP calls to whatever identity source we're looking at? Is that not reasonable?
Was that for me?
Sure.
So,
At it, thumbs down.
Yeah, I mean, that's essentially how we function here at IVOXY. We don't have that internal Active Directory, and all the things that we would use Active Directory for, we're leveraging Entra ID or Entra ID. I got to get the real pronunciation of that. Is it Entra or Entra?
I would say it's Entra. But let's say I have a server that I want to spin up and join IVOXY's realm and be able to log in with Matt, Yette, and IVOXY. I don't think, and I do that on premise. I don't think I can join the domain if it's not in the Azure footprint, right?
Not in the traditional sense. I mean, Entra ID can do LDAP, right? You can leverage it for LDAP, so you can use those traditional things. You have to have Azure Virtual Network set up to do it. There's some other configurations there, but it can do those things. Does it replace the traditional AD yet? Depends on your physical footprint, right? If you have just a couple of things that you want to connect up there, absolutely, that might be worth doing it. But if you have a full enterprise on-premises data center, you may want to consider having Active Directory around for a little bit longer.
And still to the point of, I know that as we get longer and longer and the year gets bigger and bigger, the assumption that you have an adequate internet link probably becomes less of a concern. But I mean, I remember the days of the, T1 lines and stuff like that, where it's like, do you really want to? We had customers at an integrator that I ran the data center for back in the mid 2000s, where we did a spam filtering service, and our big selling point was to save your bandwidth of your email server on premise, because if you allow all that spam traffic on your WAN link, you will flood your T1. Let us take care of it and filter the good stuff down to you, and it'll cut your bandwidth by 80%. That used to be a thing.
Mm-hmm. Those pipes.
But now, I mean, so it's like, great, yeah, I've got 10,000 users all on M365 now. They're probably all remote now, or mostly, or whatever. But imagine 10,000 users on an office footprint. What's that WAN link look like with all those Outlook clients, let alone everything else screaming up there too?
And that still exists in Active Directory too. It still has a slow link detection.
Of course it does.
Don't get me started on AD replication. AD replication windows and all of this, like 15-minute replication point. Just do it real time. Just do it real time. Use a timestamp and deal with conflicts. They are very still treating things like you've got ISDN links all over the globe. It's funny.
Some places might.
Last I looked, at least.
Right. So this is another question that maybe highlights the identity management that I don't know, but I've seen a lot of places where I want to say Okta and I want to say OAuth. I've always thought those were mechanisms to authenticate against something, but I kind of feel like they might be also trying to be an identity provider. Is that something you're familiar with as well?
Like Okta and Duo and those types of things.
Yeah. I've always felt like those are like layer on and provide a MFA type authentication process, or is that something that actually tries to displace this Active Directory type stuff?
Oh, OAuth, I'll just say that OAuth is a little different, Coz. OAuth is the underlying technology that is effectively letting you authenticate to a against an identity provider for an application, and then it creates a token that says, this allows you access to this. You don't need the password to this, and therefore, should it need to be revoked, you can't just log back in. We'll just revoke this token. But that's, I mean, Duo might use OAuth in certain use cases, but
so
they're
that's a
at different
mechanism.
layers of that stack.
That's not trying to rebuild
That's not a
your
product.
identity provider engine or database.
It's a means to authenticate against it.
Yeah, some of those are just identity proxies, right? So they're
Right.
front-ending it. So you connect to that, and it says, okay, here, you've provided whatever mechanism that we need to prove you are who you are. Here's your identity solution. Okay, now you've meshed.
And then because we're running through that, we can do things like push messages to your phone or blah, blah, whatever, that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, you've validated your identity.
Man, does any of the Microsoft product interact with Linux boxes at all? I know for myself, I'm moving everything to friggin' Linux. I've got pretty much all of my Windows gone.
Is right. I'm looking at I've got like 35 VMs, and I look and I'm like, oh, I don't think I have a Windows box.
Right, but then at the same time, I'm sitting here with, I'm just dropping my one single SSH key on all of these boxes via Ansible, and that's it. So
And I've been loving Portainer for Docker containers too.
Yeah, and I have no mechanism, like, because it's just me, it's fine. But if I had to scale this and add users or remove users, I'd need a single sign-on anything. So hence the question, does it play nice with that? Does it provide an auth mechanism for non-Windows machines?
Yeah, absolutely. You don't have to use Windows-based systems to leverage the identity platforms that it can host. Now, you may get more of those features because that's what they designed it for, but it's LDAP. If you want to use LDAP, we're talking internally or through Entra ID or both. I mean, if you're using Entra, it's going to act as a proxy, and yes, you can use it for identity and authentication.
Well, I have really come to love and loathe the fact that I have to use a cloud service for this, first of all. But MFA, the weak point is humanity. Don't get me wrong. The person is the target, and the person can be convinced to do bad stuff regardless of the technology solutions. But I have found MFA via the authenticator is great. What I think has been less great is Microsoft's communication on how to configure it, where to configure it, because there have been multiple places and you can't tell which ones apply when you want to assign conditional access, right? That's a great feature. We leverage it at IVOXY. Like, we have administrator accounts that are separate from our normal accounts for our Azure administration. But if you try to sign in from Spain, you're blocked. Like, there are geographic restrictions and all that, and I've had it buggy and not work where I'm sitting right here in my desk in the United States and have it not let me. But overall, fantastic. Now, it's constantly moving. That's the downside. With software on premise, release cycles were release cycles, and you got release notes and all of this, where the cloud stuff changes in the background. You have no idea, and you're in prod. I've struggled a lot with that. And you get these notices, this is deprecating in November. Does that apply to me or not? I don't know.
Don't know until it breaks, right?
Oh.
You almost want like a I don't know, two I'm going to say two environments, but like we're changing the core environment, but they don't have a dev environment for you to test against, right?
Yep. You are the dev environment.
Right.
And some of those things, that's one of my favorite things about Entra is the conditional access policies. Like, you said you're in Spain, you can't get in. Well, guess what? Neither can anyone in, any other bad actor country. And there's a lot of stuff that you can do there. And it's pretty easy to configure. You don't have to have this super expensive custom program that, you're spent years developing to block all this stuff anymore. It's just there, and you can tune it and customize it and have several profiles for your admins or for your users or for your remote workforce or whatever you need. It's a pretty awesome feature, and that's one that I really wish people would leverage. Is conditional access. It's just an extra layer of security above and beyond everything else that you're already doing.
You know, as far as that access and authentication piece, the one thing that I don't feel like Microsoft does very well, and I wish they would figure it out or something, is that checkbox when you're logging into the thing that says, "Would you like me to ask you this less?" Every time I check that box, and every time it keeps asking me. Like, why is it there if it's
The cookie window on StackOverflow.com.
everything? Yeah,
It never goes away.
right?
And it's fun on mobile, especially fun on mobile.
Yeah, I don't think that's an exclusive to Microsoft problem there.
No. But that's the one that, like, I'm logged into my work account on Chrome, on whatever, on my machine, right? And yet it still asks me all the time. I don't know.
So these things are going to go over at the workshop and then eventually in the class, Dade?
Yeah, absolutely. Those are some of that's the bulk of the topics there, without getting too into the weeds in the webinar, and then the class will go quite a bit deeper into those topics, focusing on your on-premises Active Directory. Like you mentioned before, it's been around for 25 years. It's often neglected, right? Maybe somebody needs a refresher. That's all. And then how to get that, tune that, and shape your environment for the cloud, if that's the direction you want to go.
Yeah, I've always said everybody's got an Active Directory environment, and everyone who's currently managing that, did you build it?
Right.
And what percentage of people are going to say, yeah, I built this thing out?
Yeah,
Low
there's
single digits probably.
almost never.
Yep.
Almost never.
Yep.
Unless it's a brand
A lot of
new,
bodies.
Like, we started this company yesterday.
Or
In which case, you probably wouldn't have Active Directory. You know?
Yeah. Well, we had one customer that's like, it was so bad, I ripped it to the ground and just rebuilt it. That did happen.
Yep.
Yep.
I
last
am
year.
still a resistor of I would say cloud first / only. You can think, I mean, cloud first, you could think whatever first. That's fine, but analyze it to your needs and what your goals are. If you need scalability at all cost, fine. If you need cost at all cost as a concern, be prepared to have a little bit of an awakening in that. You know, I'm a born skeptic. I look at the cloud models, and you look at things where is the purpose to provide the customer with exactly what they need, or is that also blended with the purpose to bring our bottom lines up as these provider companies? And you look at the licensing tiers for M365, and maybe you're in E3, but they give you just enough a taste of things that you have to jump up for E5 if you really want to take advantage of that, right? And are the products designed to get you to buy the next tier up? Yes. And you know, the cloud lock-in to that extent, and I don't know where I have an idea, but the idea that the cloud is cheaper, I mean,
It's not cheaper.
your design would have to be so wildly elastic and variable. How many of my customers' workloads are variable? Like wild swings of utilization? Very few. Very few. Large, huge enterprise, multinational, Macy's on Black Friday. Like, yeah, you wouldn't want to buy that hardware, but you know that the whole the scale promise of the cloud, yeah, that's a good one. But you want to run IaaS 24/7 in that thing, you're not going to save money on it.
And that's where it is cheaper, because you're cognizant of how much you're spending in there. It's like, oh, I can't just go spin up an IaaS cluster. That's going to cost a fortune. But if you have VMware on premises, just boom, hey, there we go. Let me just spin.
Well, and how many people have their arms around their cloud spend too?
I do.
Oh, this guy.
I got it. I know exactly what's spending all my money.
But that is a challenge. I mean, you get the repatriation, you get moonwalk out of the cloud. Because it's like Homer going back into the bush. Like, oh, I saw my cloud bill.
Yeah, especially the more admins and engineers and architects that you have building there, you get cloud sprawl. It's a real problem.
And they're DevOps people typically, who are not infrastructure people, so they don't have that concept of give me the credit card and let me go. And we've seen it, and that's why I think what you're providing, Dade, is that sanity check with let's make sure if we're going to do this thing, let's do it right with our eyes on all potential pitfalls. And I like your approach to that because that's, the more people who know, hey, what about this? Those questions that need to be asked. And I love that you're doing that.
Yeah, cloud first. If that's a business initiative, that's on them. But I prefer to go business first, right? Does it make sense? That's it, and that's what you guys were talking about.
Well, it's objective, right? It goes to what are your needs, because cloud is an option, it's a potential solution, but it's not where the conversation should start. I need to know what problem I'm trying to solve, and now let's open the deck of cards and see what might be the right suit.
Yeah,
I've never worked in a deck of card reference, I think, in IT, but that works, I think.
Oh, gold star for you.
All right, let's start to wrap towards this now. Now, do you have a date for the workshop yet, Dade?
Not yet.
Okay.
We are working on that, and as soon as we have it, we'll post it out there at all the post places that we have.
Yeah, well, this will be on the podcast thingies in mid-January, so you'll likely have a month or so. But if you've got questions or want to, hey, let me know when you do get a date. Ping us, podcast@ivoxy.com, and we'll be sure to get you that date too.
We've got quite a few classes too.
Sorry, Matt.
We've got quite a few classes that we have up there. Yeah, there's Ryan's got his ARIA class that he's working on. I've got some vSphere classes that we're doing.
Well, he's already done an ARIA class also.
Right, that's my point.
Which
it's
is
like
nice.
we've got more of these, so.
Well, and it's more likely that more people who are listening to this than the last episode are now entitled for ARIA than they were last time.
Yeah.
Also, and if you're an Enterprise Plus user and you've moved laterally, quote unquote, to VVF, you're now entitled to ARIA operations, and so let us help you get the value out of that. Effectively, if you're entitled to it, let's get value out of it, and it is a good product. I mean, VMware has done their vCloud suite over the years with vRealize operations. That is ARIA, which I think now will be named VCF operations. I think ARIA, the name, is going away also. Yay! But we'll keep up with that for you and help you enable that as well. All right, Dade. Couple things that you've never seen before, and this kind of segment is we do it, we don't do it, but it kind of goes on the trope that every year I'm a year older, right? And I'm getting tired of saying I've never seen that before. Haven't I been around this long enough where I've seen almost everything that can happen? I shouldn't be saying that, and yet we see that.
So, and this is not something that I've never seen. This is something that I wish everyone else had seen, and it's relatively simple, and it's privileged identity management using Entra ID. It really is like all of that security focus that people have been on the past decade or so. It's just another piece of it, but it allows you to have an administrator account that's not an administrator, but you can self-elevate and do what you need to do, including all of your across the board in Entra. And you click a button and it says, hey, how long do you want to be an admin for? Say an hour, and boom, does it, and then automatically de-elevates you later. It includes MFA. You just approve it on your phone, so there's some level of identity verification. Yeah, it's pretty nice.
Is the idea there that we're like taking away this ADM dash Matt Cozzolino and then Matt Cozzolino, where I've got two accounts? Is that like removing that so I can elevate
You
it
could do that. I still prefer to have a secondary account, but a secondary...
Well, I would treat those as break glass. You could still have those, but treat them as break glass. Put them in a safe somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can have those break glass accounts, but then you can have your account say, hey, I need to be global admin. You don't want to leave your main account as a global admin. That's a pretty far-fetched example. I don't recommend using your main account as your global admin, but you could do it.
But isn't that what this is for?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And is there a way that could be third-party authenticated just in time?
Yeah. How do you prevent that person from self-requesting that elevation to do the thing?
Well, so it can be controlled. If you can set the role that they're allowed to have. Like if you look through Entra ID, there's hundreds of roles.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't want them to be global admin, if you want them to be some specific role that you have designed for one of your SaaS applications, say like a PeopleSoft admin, I need to be able to get into PeopleSoft or Salesforce or something. They can elevate and
it sounds like a sudo. It's like sudo.
Pretty much a sudo, but it's in timed out. for an hour, 3 hours, 3 days, whatever you need, whatever you approve. There's a template that you can assign.
What would be super cool is, and I don't know if you know, I'm not expecting you to necessarily all the details, but it'd be amazing if, like, let's say I spanked Kaz because he's been bad in Azure, and he wants to elevate, and he's still got the role, but I need to approve it. So he does it. I get a push on my phone. So I go, hey, on Slack, hey, Kaz, did you request this? Which I suppose could be dangerous, right? I suppose that could be a danger point in terms of social engineering, but
yeah, you could be
ideally...
But yes,
yep,
you can
ideally,
do that.
yeah. Oh, that's super cool. I like that.
That kind of dovetails with a lot of the multi-user delete stuff that the storage arrays and whatnot are coming up with. Like, I want to delete this volume, but you have to wait 72 hours and then have two people approve it, right? That.
The safe lock.
Yeah, that
and
stuff.
Yep. Which I know you've railed against the manufacturer level of control over this piece of hardware that I bought from you.
Mm-hmm.
I see where you're coming from in those ways, but I love I call it the golden eye feature. Like, you need two people holding the keys, different ends of the room, they can't touch each other, turning at the same time. If you want to go to bed and know that my data will not be encrypted or deleted, like with Rubrik, I love that feature.
To be explicit about it, it's the way it's presented. Buy this thing that you can't use without a subscription is where my struggle is with that, right? And it's the fact that it's buy this thing and to subscribe.
Well, that's contradictory. That I didn't buy it.
Exactly. That's my issue. If it's
guys, you need support for gripes. I'm your grievance master right here. You need that. I've got. Yeah, that sticks to the wall here at this house.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, Dade, we're excited, man, about the class. It's going to be great. The workshop especially. It's kind of to give you a taste to see if it's something you'd be interested in, and that way we can offer you that without having to worry about you making a commitment to something you're not sure of. So the workshop's going to be a great way to do that. Abnormal workshop coming up here in 2 weeks on the 23rd of January. Definitely reach out. The email is podcast@ivoxy.com if you've got questions on any of those things. You boys got anything to warn us off on in the new year, 2025? What's your prediction for 2025 in the tech world while we wrap?
More DNS problems.
It's always DNS.
Boy,
I'm
laying like 1 to 10 odds on that. Not 10 to 1. 1 to 10. That's not paying out, Kaz. That's about as guaranteed as it gets. Are you in Polymarket? Is it DNS? Yes or no?
I got a ping from one of our other guys yesterday, and I'm helping him with that. And then 20 minutes later, hey, so DNS cached out, and we rebooted the server, and now everything works. I'm like, well, there
Did
you
you go search for it was DNS haiku? Haiku GIF?
Exactly, sent that to him.
I love that one. I think that's in my Twitter bio, like it was DNS. Mm-hmm. Always. Well, all right, Dade. Really appreciate you joining us, taking time out of your day. Good to always chat with you and have you on. And Kaz, always good to see you and chat with you too, man.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to yet another episode of Data Center Therapy. Have a good one, everyone.
Bye.